chapter from Dream, which has got loads of twists and turns. I'll read this section because I'm confusing myself with it. I haven't shaved, so every time I film, my beard gets longer, and then one day I'll just shave it off and do it again. 1 minute. Until he opened his eyes and he looked around. Jack was lying on dirt and leaves, and when he looked round, he was dismayed to find that he was in some kind of dark, dirty cave. He stood up and looked outside. All that he could see were lush green fern trees and rugged fields. It looked like paradise. The screech of an eagle in the distance changed all that. He looked again, and although he wasn't an expert on birds, he was sure it looked too large to be an eagle. He peered closer, and he was amazed to see that it was a pterodactyl. He could see its veins bulging and throbbing through its giant wings and its massive pointy beak. It was terrifying. He inched back inside the cave. He wasn't sure if they were vegetarians, but he wasn't going to wait to find out. Jack didn't know how he'd got there, and he couldn't see a way out. At least it's safe in here, he thought, relieved. And then he heard a hissing sound. At first it sounded like somebody was frying bacon, and he looked round and he could see nothing, but then he looked up. There it was, coiled round the branch of a tree. It was oily black, with a bright red tongue flicking out as if ready to strike. It was a horrible snake. Jack inched away quietly, stepping on the soft leaves. He was careful not to make the slightest sound. He had no choice but to leave the cave. He wasn't sure what dangers awaited him outside, but he had no choice. He wasn't ready to be the snake's breakfast. Slowly he went down the hill, and he kept his eyes on the pterodactyl, but lucky for him it had flown off into the distance, but he could still hear its scary cries. He made his way through the fern trees, and his heart jumped with every noise and falling branch. He expected to be pounced on and gobbled up at any minute. It felt like he had a target on his back. Hello, viewers. He picked up a stick and he used it to beat back the ferns and the tangle of weeds. Thankfully, the ground was hard, not slippy. Jack heard the sound of running water in the distance, and he decided to look. He came upon a fast-flowing stream. He bent down to cup the water in his hand, and he splashed it on his face. He wasn't sure if it was drinkable, but he was so thirsty that he did not care. The water was cold but refreshing, and he was tempted to go for a swim, but he wasn't sure what lurked beneath. He had a good idea that it wasn't going to be friendly. He jumped when he heard more shrieks and cried in the distance. He felt so vulnerable and alone. He had a flask in his bag, and he filled it with water from the stream. Something large and dark moved through the water, and he took his hand out quickly. Jack was startled by a rustling sound above him, and he was amazed to see small monkey-like creatures hanging from the branches and scratching their furry orange stomachs and grinning maniacally. They really need a good floss and polish, Jack thought, amused, when he saw their teeth, and he threw them a banana, and they scrambled to catch it and shrieked like children. They were so funny they could have watched them all day, but he knew he had to keep moving. He cut through the fern trees, and pretty soon he was beginning to sweat. It was heavy work. He sat on a large brown stone and drank a large gulp of water, and as he did so, a large shadow covered him and the surrounding trees in an ominous dark. It wasn't a cloud which was causing the disturbance, it was an iguanodon, or maybe a stegosaurus, he wasn't sure. It was munching on a plant with only 10 yards away from where he was standing. Jack gulped and edged back into the foliage. He wasn't sure if they were vegetarians, but he was not going to take the chance once again. It ripped the leaves off the trees, and it stood on its hind legs. It was massive, which was when Jack realized it was an iguanodon, as he'd seen it in a book at school. Jack was amazed by its size and power. It turned its massive head and gave him a long, curious look, and then it went on munching. Jack was transfixed. It was amazing being so close, but not too close. To his amazement soon turned to terror when an even larger shadow fell and the forest went dark. It was a T-Rex, and it was big, vicious looking, and totally terrifying. Jack dropped his water bottle and he quivered with fright as a T-Rex jumped on the poor iguanodon and started having it for lunch. I'm next, thought poor Jack, and he gulped. The T-Rex turned its wrinkled, massive head and cast its evil black eye towards him. Jack wanted to run. He tried to run, but he was frozen with fear, and his legs wobbled like jelly. Its teeth were as large as tombstones and just as dirty, but they were razor sharp as 100 razors. I'm done for, he whispered to no one in particular, as its huge clawed foot whipped round at lightning speed and squashed Jack like a bug on a windscreen. Luckily, he felt no pain, and everything went as black as the T-Rex's soulless, dead eyes. Hope you enjoyed that. Please sub me.